Have you ever told yourself, "I'll start when I'm ready"? You wait for that moment, the one where everything suddenly clicks. When you feel confident, when things feel clear, when the fear finally goes quiet, and you feel strong enough to begin. But that moment, it never really comes, does it? You wait, you hesitate, you overthink, and while you're doing all that, life keeps moving. Time keeps ticking. Nothing slows down just because you're stuck. And here's the truth most of us avoid. Readiness is not a prerequisite. It's a product. You don't get ready and then start. You start, and that's how you get ready. Think about it. How many ideas have you shelved because you didn't feel ready? How many chances have you passed up waiting for the right time? How much life have you postponed simply because the fear was louder than your courage? We often think change happens in a flash of clarity, some movie moment revelation, where we suddenly feel empowered and certain. But real change? It starts in ordinary moments with ordinary decisions, like choosing to act before you feel completely comfortable. Here's the wake-up call. If you want things to shift, you have to move before you feel ready. Because most people, they never do. They wait for the fog to clear, but it never does. They wait for confidence, but confidence doesn't visit the hesitant. It shows up after action. It rewards the ones who show up trembling, unsure, and still move forward anyway. That's why this isn't just another motivational video. It's not about getting you hyped for a few minutes. It's about changing the way you think. It's about showing you, with real tools and a grounded mindset, how to finally take control. And it starts by deleting the belief that says, "I'll do it when I'm ready." Because ready is a lie we tell ourselves to avoid the risk of failure. Let's be real for a second. Most of the things you're waiting for before you begin, they're just illusions. Certainty doesn't exist. Perfect timing never shows up. Confidence comes after you've done the hard thing, not before. And that's not bad news. That's power. Because it means you don't have to wait anymore. You're already more capable than you think. You've just been waiting for permission that was never needed. What if today is the most ready you'll ever be? What if you stopped waiting and started building right here, right now? Because here's the deal. Your life is not going to transform with more information. Not with another podcast, not with another inspirational quote, not even with this video, unless you decide to act. And that's the difference between those who grow and those who stay stuck. Between those who live life full of purpose and those who stay busy with distractions. This video, this whole series, isn't just here to pump you up. It's here to give you the tools to break the cycle, the clarity to stop waiting, the strategy to move forward even when your hands are shaking. And if that sounds like the kind of growth you've been waiting for, then good. Because from this point forward, we're not waiting anymore. We're building, we're moving, we're stepping into action. Not because we're fully ready, but because we've decided to be the kind of person who acts anyway. So if you've been standing on the edge of your next chapter, let this be the nudge. Let this be the voice that reminds you your future doesn't need perfection. It just needs you to start. Because once you move even just a little, everything changes. Let me ask you something honest. If your future depended entirely on what you did today, would you do anything differently? Think about it for a second. Not some far-off dream version of your life, but your actual, lived, breathing future, 1 year from now, 5 years from now, shaped only by the steps you take today. Because that's not a hypothetical. That's the truth. Your future isn't a lottery you win. It's not something that arrives out of nowhere when the stars align. It's built choice by choice, action by action, moment by moment, starting now. But here's the catch. Most people don't act like that's true. Most people wait. They wait for clarity. They wait for the fear to go away. They wait for confidence to show up and take them by the hand. But waiting doesn't build anything. Waiting just reinforces who you already are. Here's a hard truth most people miss. You don't gain confidence and then take the leap. You take the leap, and that's how you build confidence. Courage first, confidence second. It's always in that order. And I get it. Starting before you feel ready feels risky. It feels exposed. It feels backwards. But look back at your life, really look, and you'll see this pattern again and again. The biggest growth didn't come from a perfect plan. It came from that moment you said, "I'm doing this anyway." That uncomfortable email you sent, that decision to walk into a new room, not knowing anyone. That project you began even though imposter syndrome screamed in your ear. You didn't feel ready, but you moved. And because you moved, you changed. That's the secret. Readiness doesn't precede action. It follows it. Waiting to feel confident is like standing outside the gym waiting to get fit before you go in. It doesn't work that way. You build strength by lifting, not by waiting to feel strong. The same goes for life. And here's the part we don't talk about enough. It's not the big decisions that shape your future. It's the small, invisible ones you repeat every day. Do you hit snooze or get up with intention? Do you scroll aimlessly or spend that time on something meaningful? Do you keep that promise to yourself, the one no one else knows about? These little acts, tiny, quiet decisions, build identity. And your identity? That's what determines your future. Not your goals, not your dreams. Your habits. Who you are becoming is not a mystery. It's a math equation. It's the sum of what you repeatedly do. So ask yourself, honestly, are your daily actions matching the future you want? Because if not, nothing changes until you do. The scary part? Most people live like they've got forever to figure it out. They say, someday, like it's a real day on the calendar. But someday never shows up. Only today does. And that means this moment right here, right now, it matters. So, how do you live like your future depends on it. You stop negotiating with your excuses. You stop letting your emotions dictate your standards. You stop waiting for motivation and start moving based on principle. You start treating each day like it's your shot because it is. You walk into the room like you mean it. You follow through on your word even when no one's watching. You speak with clarity. You decide with intention. That's what it looks like when you act like your future is on the line because, friend, it is. And no, it's not always easy. It's not always glamorous, but it's always worth it. Here's something to reflect on. Every time you avoid the hard thing, you reinforce the version of you that stays behind. The one who plays it safe. The one who waits for signs. The one who settles. But every time you do the hard thing, even in a small way, you cast a vote for the version of you that rises. The disciplined one. The focused one. The future builder. So, what are you choosing today? Because the future isn't some magical reveal waiting for you down the road. It's built in real time by what you do today. Let this be the day you stop waiting. Let this be the moment you stop asking if you're ready. Let this be the breath where you say, ready or not, I move. Because from this second forward, you are no longer someone who waits for life to happen. You're someone who happens to life. And that changes everything. Let me share something that might challenge the way you've been thinking about change. You don't need to change your whole life today. You just need one bold move. One clear, decisive action. One moment of courage where you stop second-guessing and do the thing you already know needs to be done. We often believe that change requires 100 small steps, that we have to fix everything piece by piece before we're allowed to evolve. But real transformation? It often starts with a single decision, and it's usually the one you've been avoiding. Think about it. What if your entire life could shift because of one choice? Not a dramatic scene from a movie, not some overnight miracle. Just a quiet moment of resolve where you draw a line in the sand and say, this ends today. That's what a bold move is. It's not loud, it's not for show, but it's powerful. It interrupts the loop, the cycle of doubt, delay, and distraction that's been playing in your head. Most people don't make that move. Not because they don't want change, but because they're stuck in thought. Endless analysis. What ifs? Worst case scenarios. Overthinking is like running on a treadmill. You're exhausted, but you haven't gone anywhere. Meanwhile, boldness? Boldness gets you off the treadmill and into motion. Let me give you an example. I knew someone who spent 3 years complaining about their job. It drained them. It stressed them. It made them bitter at home. But they stayed. Not because they loved it, but because leaving felt risky. Until one day, they applied just once for a position they didn't think they'd qualify for. They clicked submit and almost vomited from nerves. But a week later, they got the interview. 2 weeks later, they started the new role. Today, they tell me that one decision changed everything. Not just their job, but their self-worth. That's the power of one bold move. It doesn't take a dozen actions to shift your momentum. It takes one that matters. It might be walking into the gym for the first time in 6 months, or finally signing your name on that application, or telling someone the truth you've been avoiding for too long. You already know what your bold move is. It's been whispering to you every morning and tugging at you every night. You've just been too scared to answer it. But let me ask you this. What are you more afraid of, the risk of doing it, or the regret of staying the same? Because here's what boldness does psychologically and practically. It resets the pattern. It tells your brain, we act now, not we wait and think. And once you do it once you create a new reference point, now your nervous system doesn't default to fear. It starts to trust you. That's how momentum is born. Not from perfection, from movement. Your brain is wired to avoid danger, yes, but it's also wired to adapt. So when you start acting decisively, even while scared, you change the loop. You stop feeding the story that says, I always overthink, and start building the identity of someone who acts. Now let's be real. Bold moves come with nerves. Your hands might shake, your voice might tremble, but that's not weakness. That's proof you're stretching. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to move while you feel fear. That's how confidence is built, from evidence. From showing your body and your mind that you're capable of action in the face of uncertainty. Imagine this. You make the decision you've been postponing. And for the first time in a long time, you don't back down. No explanation, no permission, just action. In that moment, you're no longer waiting for life to happen. You're creating it. And once you get a taste of that power, that self-respect, it's hard to go back. So I'll leave you with this question. What's the bold move you've been putting off? You don't need to tell anyone. You don't need to announce it. But you do need to make it. And when you do, when you finally stop rehearsing and start acting, you'll wonder why you waited so long. Because on the other side of that bold step is momentum, is growth, is you becoming someone who doesn't just dream about change, but makes it happen. Let me ask you a quiet question. Where is your focus going today? Not your intention, not your to-do list, but your actual moment-by-moment attention. Because in a world full of noise, full of notifications, opinions, distractions, and drama, your focus has become one of your most valuable currencies. Focus is power, and what you focus on expands. What you give your energy to shapes your life. So, the question isn't just what you want. It's what you're actually giving yourself to each hour, each day. See? Most people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they're distracted. They wake up with good intentions, but by noon, their energy has been chipped away by 14 notifications, a gossip-filled conversation, a few scrolls through the endless feed, and 5 tasks that weren't even on the original plan. And at the end of the day, they wonder, why didn't I get anything important done? That's not a time problem. That's a focus problem. Because time without intention is just busy work. But focus, real, protected focus, that's what builds the life you actually want. So let's talk about the hard truth. If you don't guard your focus, someone else will use it for you. They'll use it for their crisis, their request, their entertainment, their chaos, and not because they're evil, just because that's how the world works. Your job isn't to be available to everything. It's to be available to what actually matters. And that means learning a powerful word. Number. Saying no to distractions. No to tasks that don't move the needle. No to obligations that don't align with your values. No to energy drains that look productive but leave you empty. Because every time you say yes to something that doesn't matter, you're saying no to something that does. Now, I know no is uncomfortable. We worry about disappointing people. We feel guilty. But let me ask you this. What's more important, being momentarily liked or being deeply aligned with your mission? Because your focus, that's the fuel of your future. And if you spend it trying to please everyone or manage everything, you'll have nothing left for the things that truly count. Want to build something meaningful? Then you need fewer distractions, not more time. You need discipline. Discipline to shut the door. Discipline to turn off the noise. Discipline to sit with what matters even when it's hard. Let me give you a picture. Imagine your attention like a flashlight. If you shine it everywhere at once, on the walls, the ceiling, your phone, the television, everything gets a little light, but nothing becomes clear. But if you point it intentionally in one direction, suddenly things become visible, precise, powerful. That's what focus does. It sharpens, it reveals, it moves things forward. And you don't need 8 hours of perfect productivity. You need a few focused hours with no leaks. Because energy leaks are real. That one conversation that derails your mindset. That one quick scroll that turns into 30 minutes. That one distraction that seems small, but costs you your creative flow. So how do you protect your focus? You become aware. You audit your energy. You ask, where is my attention being spent? What is it building? And what is it costing me? And you get ruthlessly honest about what needs to go. Not because you're cold, not because you're selfish, but because you're serious. Serious about your vision. Serious about your standards. Serious about your future. And here's something few people will tell you. The life you're trying to build will not happen if your attention is always scattered. Clarity requires space. Discipline requires silence. Focus requires boundaries. So yes, some people won't understand why you say no. Some will take it personally. But your future, your peace, your mission, they need you to choose anyway. Because every moment of deep focus compounds. 1 hour of locked-in focus can move your life more than 10 hours of distracted effort. And over time, that adds up. To results. To confidence. To real growth. Discipline, focus, growth. That's the chain. That's the system. That's the edge. So if you're tired of feeling like your progress doesn't match your potential, maybe it's not because you're not working hard enough. Maybe it's because your focus is leaking. Draw the line. Cut the noise. Say no clearly, kindly, consistently, and reclaim the space you need to build something real. Let me tell you something most people don't want to admit. Comfort feels good, but it doesn't take you anywhere. It's warm, it's familiar, it's safe, but it's also the place where your potential quietly goes to sleep. Have you ever caught yourself choosing what's easy, not because it's right, but just because it's familiar? Maybe it's the job you've outgrown but haven't left. Maybe it's the habit you know is hurting you, but it still feels comfortable. Maybe it's the way you hold back your voice in a room, even when you have something real to say. We all do it. We all have moments where comfort whispers to us, don't push, just stay. But here's the truth most growth stories have in common. The life you want, the person you're trying to become, lives beyond that whisper. Because growth? It never happens in comfort. Growth begins at the edge, that sharp edge where things feel awkward, new, uncertain. It begins in the gym on the day you don't feel strong. In the meeting where you speak up, even with a trembling voice. In the moment you take the leap not knowing exactly where you'll land. Every day you have two choices: comfort or growth, familiarity or stretch. And most of the time, they don't live in the same room. You don't build resilience by avoiding resistance. You build it by moving toward the hard thing again and again until your nervous system starts to believe, I can handle this. That's the thing most people forget. Growth isn't a dramatic transformation. It's not a sudden, overnight shift. It's a quiet, daily decision to lean into the challenge even just a little. You speak up instead of staying silent. You keep your promise instead of making an excuse. You get up and move your body, even when the couch feels like a magnet. Those aren't big moves, but when you stack them, they build self-trust. And self-trust? That's your foundation. That's where confidence is born. Think about it. When's the last time you did something that truly stretched you? Not something that drained you, something that grew you? Because that feeling right after you push past resistance, that quiet moment where you realize, I just did something I didn't think I could. That's the moment everything shifts. Growth doesn't just give you new skills. It gives you a new identity. You go from someone who avoids discomfort to someone who rises through it. And the more you choose growth, the more natural it becomes. At first, it feels like a fight. You second guess. You negotiate. You want to back out. But over time, growth becomes instinct. You start to crave the stretch. You begin to see challenge not as a threat, but as a sign that you're in the right place. That's how transformation works. Not through motivation, through practice. So next time discomfort shows up, instead of running from it, pause. Ask yourself, is this discomfort growth knocking on my door? Because here's the irony. The longer you chase comfort, the more discomfort you feel. Stuck, unfulfilled, out of sync with who you could be. But the more you chase growth, the more peace you find. Not comfort, peace. There's a difference. Peace says, I'm proud of how I showed up today. Comfort says, I avoided the hard stuff again. And you know this already. Deep down, you know you feel best when you choose the challenge. When you step outside the line just a little. When you stretch instead of shrink. So let me ask you, where in your life have you been choosing comfort when you know it's time to grow? That one place you keep circling but never move on? That conversation you've been avoiding? That goal you've delayed because the timing isn't right? What if today, not someday, is the day you shift? What if all it takes is one choice? Just one decision to lean into the discomfort, trust the stretch, and believe that who you want to be isn't out of reach, they're just waiting on the other side of effort. So go. Choose growth. Not once, not when it's convenient, but every single time comfort tries to talk you out of your own potential. Because you're not here to stay the same. You're here to rise. Let me tell you something that might shift the way you walk through the world. You don't need anyone's approval to belong. Let that sink in for a second. Your worth, your presence, your voice, they aren't things someone else gets to validate. They're not handed to you. They're not unlocked by a job title or a round of applause or a fancy invitation. They're yours the moment you decide to own them. And here's the truth. Belonging begins with self-respect, not permission. Not confidence that someone gives you, but confidence you carry, even when it feels shaky. The kind that says, I may not have all the answers. I may still be learning, but I'm allowed to be here. You ever walked into a room, a meeting, a social gathering, a new opportunity and immediately felt small? Like everyone else had some secret code you didn't get? Like you had to shrink to fit? You're not alone. Most of us have felt that, and too many of us have let that feeling silence us. But here's the shift. You don't wait for the room to approve you. You show up like you belong, and the room adjusts. That doesn't mean you fake it. It doesn't mean you pretend to be someone you're not. It means you stop apologizing for taking up space. It means you let your body language, your mindset, and your voice reflect your worth even if your hands are shaking. Because posture matters. Not just how you stand, but how you carry yourself mentally. Ask yourself, when you walk into a room, are you acting like someone who values their own presence? Or are you hoping someone else will notice your value first? See, real belonging doesn't come from being the loudest in the room or knowing all the right words. It comes from presence, quiet, grounded, intentional presence. It's the difference between walking in with a question mark over your head and walking in with a period. A sense of, I'm here, and that's enough. You don't have to dominate the space, but you do have to stop hiding in it. People feel that. They feel when someone is grounded, not seeking approval, just showing up with truth. And that kind of energy, that kind of quiet certainty, it shifts everything. Let me share this from experience. The most powerful people I've met don't walk in trying to prove they belong. They walk in already knowing it. Not from ego, but from clarity. Clarity about what they offer. Clarity about who they are becoming. So here's a question for you. How many rooms have you tiptoed through, waiting to be seen when what you really needed was to stand tall and decide to be present? How many times have you kept your voice down, your ideas small, your ambitions quiet, just to avoid being too much? You know what's actually too much? Shrinking your light just to make others comfortable. Let that go. You are not lucky to be in the room. You worked to be there. You made choices. You showed up. You kept going when it was easier to quit. You belong not because someone said so, but because you said so. So next time you walk into the room, whether it's a boardroom or a classroom or a living room, walk in like your presence matters. Because it does. Even if your voice shakes. Even if your legs feel heavy. Even if you're still becoming the version of yourself you dream of. Show up anyway. Show up when you feel unsure. Show up when it's tempting to play small. Show up with your chin up, your shoulders back, your voice steady, even if only on the inside. Because that's how you build confidence. Not by waiting for it, but by practicing it. One room at a time. One conversation at a time. One presence at a time. The truth is, most of the people you admire are the ones who seem like they just have it. They started exactly where you are. Nervous, doubtful, learning, but they kept walking in. Until eventually, the room stopped intimidating them because they stopped intimidating themselves. Remember, the room doesn't give you value. You bring value into the room. So walk in like you belong. Not because you've arrived, but because you've decided to grow in public. That's what changes everything. Let me ask you something that might sting a little. How many things in your life have you delayed just because you told yourself, I'm not ready yet? That sentence, that simple phrase, is one of the most convincing lies we tell ourselves. And the longer we believe it, the more powerful it becomes. It starts small. I'll apply when I'm more experienced. I'll speak up when I feel more confident. I'll go after that dream once I've figured everything out. But here's the truth. Readiness doesn't arrive before action. It's created through action. I'm not ready isn't wisdom. It's fear dressed up to look responsible. Because deep down, what most of us are really afraid of isn't failure. It's exposure. It's being seen in the messy middle. It's risking embarrassment. It's stepping into unknown ground without a perfect map. But here's the twist. Every person you admire, every story of success, every transformation started with a decision to move while still unsure. They didn't wait until the fear was gone. They didn't wait for clarity to fall from the sky. They didn't wait for permission. They acted. And because they acted, they became ready. Readiness is not a starting point. It's a byproduct of movement. Think about the first time you drove a car. Were you ready? Probably not. But you learned. You adapted. You grew in real time because you had to. That's how growth works. You step in, you stretch, you stumble a little, you course correct. And somewhere along the way, you look back and realize you've become someone who's capable. So the question is, what are you delaying right now because of a sentence you've repeated too often? Is it the book you've wanted to write? The career shift that keeps calling you? The conversation that might change everything? Every time you say, "I'm not ready," you delay the exact experience that would prepare you. That's the irony. Waiting doesn't build readiness. It postpones it. And here's what happens while you wait. Someone else, just as uncertain, steps in anyway. Someone else clicks submit, says yes, signs up, shows up, even scared. And that person begins to grow. Not because they were more talented or lucky, but because they moved. So here's the mindset shift. You don't act because you feel ready. You act so that you can become ready. That subtle shift changes everything. Neuroscience even backs this up. Momentum changes brain chemistry. Every time you act, you generate clarity. You create dopamine, reinforce identity, and establish self-trust. Waiting? It does the opposite. It gives your fear more time to build a stronger argument. So what do? You start where you are, with what you've got, in the middle of the uncertainty, while your voice trembles, while your hands shake. You take the leap not because it feels easy, but because you're done letting fear decide. And here's something important. Action doesn't just create progress, it creates proof. Proof that you're capable. Proof that the old story you've been telling yourself is ready to be rewritten. Proof that the voice saying, "not yet," doesn't get the final word. So if "I'm not ready" has been your excuse, this is your moment to delete it. Not to push yourself blindly, but to liberate yourself. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to know everything. You just need to move with intention, with courage, and with the belief that you'll figure it out as you go. That's how all great stories begin. So what's the move you've been postponing? What's the thing that scares you just enough to matter? Whatever it is, start there. And remember, you don't become ready by thinking. You become ready by doing. Let's talk about fear for a second. Not the horror movie kind, not the life or death kind, but the quiet, internal fear, the kind that whispers, "What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? What will people think?" Yeah, that one. That kind of fear shows up not because you're weak, but because you're standing on the edge of something that matters. Fear isn't a red light. It's a signal that growth is nearby. The problem is, most of us were taught to treat fear like a warning, something to avoid. So we shrink back, we wait for it to disappear, we play small just to stay safe. But here's the truth. Fear doesn't shrink unless you face it. Avoiding fear only makes it louder. Hiding from discomfort only gives it more control. The people who grow, the ones who evolve, they don't wait for fear to vanish. They move forward with it. Think about the first time you did something that made you nervous. Your first job interview. That first time you spoke in front of a room. The first workout after years away. You were scared, right? But then, you survived it. Maybe you even surprised yourself. And over time, that thing that once scared you became normal. That's the pattern. Face the fear. Repeat the action. And eventually, it loses its grip. You don't become fearless. You become familiar with the stretch. That's how confidence is really built. Not in your head, but in your nervous system. Your body learns. This didn't destroy me. This is something I can handle. This is who I'm becoming now. And that changes everything. But if you keep avoiding what scares you, here's what happens. You build a life where fear is the boss, where your dreams stay locked behind imaginary walls, where you start mistaking safety for peace. Neuroscience tells us this too. Repeated exposure to fear reduces its emotional weight. This is literally how therapy for phobias works. Step by step, moment by moment, your brain rewires. You train yourself to act in spite of nerves. And eventually, fear becomes just another feeling, not a stop sign. So here's the invitation. What scares you right now? Not in a reckless way, but in a way that feels connected to your growth. That thing you've been avoiding. That leap you've been hesitating to take. That boundary you've been scared to set. What if instead of waiting to feel ready, you just did it once? Then again, until your nervous system stopped flinching. You won't always get it right. You'll stumble. You'll overthink. You might even feel like backing out. But if you stay in the room, stay in the moment, stay in the stretch, you'll build something powerful. Resilience. Not the loud, showy kind, the quiet kind. The kind that says, I felt this before, and I didn't run. And here's what's beautiful. Eventually, what used to make your heart race will feel like a warm-up. What once felt like a mountain will feel like a step. Not because the world got easier, but because you got stronger. And you'll start to realize fear was never the enemy. Avoidance was. Inaction was. So stop letting fear have the mic. Stop letting it call the shots. Start giving it a new role as a signal that you're getting closer to something important. Because the version of you that you've been dreaming about, they're not fearless. They've just walked into fear so many times, it's become familiar. It's become part of the path. So go do what scares you. Do it shaking. Do it unsure. Do it messy. But do it. Then, do it again. Until it's no longer scary. Just normal. And when that happens, you'll realize nothing truly powerful ever happens inside your comfort zone. Let me share something you won't hear in most highlight reels. The most powerful growth you'll ever experience happens in private. Not on a stage, not in a post, not under the lights of public praise, but in the quiet, in the ordinary, in the unseen. We live in a world that celebrates visibility. That measures progress by applause. But real transformation? It doesn't need an audience. It happens when no one's watching. When you choose to keep your promise just because you said you would. True consistency is not built on motivation. It's built on values. And values don't care about mood swings. They show up rain or shine, energy or no energy, with or without witnesses. You want to know who someone really is? Don't look at what they do when it's easy. Look at what they do when it's just them and the mirror. That workout you do at 6 a.m., even when no one will notice. That book you're writing, one word at a time, even if it's not trending. That discipline to stay the course, not because it's fun, but because it's yours. That's where character is forged. And it's not glamorous. You'll have mornings where motivation is nowhere in sight. Days when your effort feels invisible. Moments when no one claps, no one sees, no one validates. But you still show up. That's the difference between growth and hype. Hype wants momentum now. Growth is willing to build it quietly. Because here's the hard truth. You don't get stronger from what you do once. You get stronger from what you repeat. Even when it's boring. Even when it's unnoticed. Even when your results are still hiding. Think of consistency like stacking bricks. One brick doesn't look like much. 10 still doesn't feel like a wall. But day after day, small action after small action, eventually you look up and there's a structure built from your own grit. And nobody saw it being built. But it's there. It's solid. It's earned. That's what long-term growth feels like. You might be wondering, but what's the point if no one sees it? And here's the answer. Because you see it. And that self-respect you build in silence? That's the foundation for everything else. It changes how you walk, how you speak, how you carry yourself in rooms, even when you're the quietest one in there. Because deep down, you kept your word when no one else was watching. And that kind of consistency, it's rare. But it's also magnetic. People can feel when you're rooted. Not loud, not showy, but steady. You don't need to prove. You don't need to chase. Because the work has already shaped you. So, here's the invitation. Stop measuring your progress by how many people notice. Start measuring it by how often you keep your word, especially when it's inconvenient. The gym sessions, the journaling, the budgeting, the learning, the quiet commitments. They don't make noise, but they build a life. Don't underestimate the power of the ordinary, because eventually, the ordinary done with extraordinary consistency becomes remarkable. And one day, people might ask, how did you do it? But you'll know, it wasn't a viral moment. It was all the invisible ones. The reps, the rituals, the daily, deliberate choices. So, stay in the process. Let it be private. Let it be quiet. Let it be sacred. Because while everyone else is chasing visibility, you'll be building something that lasts. Let's talk about standards. Not the ones you post about, not the ones you preach, but the ones you live by when no one's watching. Because here's the thing, we all admire certain qualities in others: discipline, focus, honesty, follow through. But the real question is, are you holding yourself to those same standards? It's easy to respect people who are consistent, grounded, clear in their values. But it's even more powerful to ask, what would my life look like if I actually lived like the people I admire? Most people live by what's convenient. The deeper work, the uncomfortable conversations, the showing up on hard days, the quiet self-correction that's left for when I feel like it. But growth doesn't live in convenience. It lives in standards. Ask yourself, do you expect more from others than you require of yourself? Do you forgive your own shortcuts while judging others for theirs? Do you say, I want to be disciplined, but keep making excuses when it's time to act? This isn't about guilt. It's about alignment. Because nothing feels better, nothing feels more powerful than being the kind of person you respect. That's how momentum is built. Not from hype, but from quiet self-leadership. You wake up, and instead of waiting for motivation, you say, this is what I do. This is who I am. These are my standards. And over time, those choices stack. You start to trust yourself more. People start to feel it. You carry a different energy not because you're perfect, but because you're practicing what you preach. Let's be real. Holding yourself to a higher standard isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it means calling yourself out. Sometimes it means saying no to what's easy, so you can say yes to what's right. Sometimes it means working when you'd rather coast, or staying kind when you feel triggered. But those moments, they forge you. Think of the people you look up to, the ones who inspire you, just by how they move through the world. Chances are, they don't get there by accident. They've chosen discipline over excuses, integrity over shortcuts, growth over comfort. They've trained themselves to act in alignment not with what feels good in the moment, but with the future they're building. And that's available to you too. You don't have to be extraordinary to start living with high standards. You just have to stop negotiating with mediocrity. Start simple. Show up on time not for praise, but for pride. Follow through not because someone's watching, but because you are. Speak with honesty not because it's easy, but because it's who you've decided to be. The more you do this, the more your identity shifts. Not into someone who tries, but into someone who embodies. And that creates something deeper than confidence, self-respect. Because when your actions match your values, you walk lighter. You carry less guilt, less friction, more clarity, more peace. So here's the invitation. Don't just admire greatness. Practice it. Don't just quote discipline. Live it. Don't just praise integrity. Choose it, especially when it's hard. Hold yourself to admired standards. Not because you have to be perfect, but because the world doesn't need more people who talk about change. It needs more people who model it. Let's get honest for a moment. Most of us aren't short on intentions. We've got lists, plans, ideas. We journal, we reflect, we dream. We set goals at the beginning of every year. But the truth? It's not intention that transforms your life. It's action. Not the plan on the page, but the step you take. Because you can think your way into circles. You can study, analyze, and prepare forever. But nothing changes until you move. Action is what turns potential into momentum. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be real. You want to change your life? Prove it with movement. That conversation you've been avoiding? That small business idea you keep sketching but never start? That health routine you said you'd commit to when things slow down? They're all waiting on your action, not your perfection. Because here's what most people don't realize. Action is what creates clarity. Not the other way around. You don't wait to feel clear to move. You move, and the clarity follows. That's how your brain works. When you act, you give your mind a data point, a lived experience, something to calibrate from. You go from theory to reality, from I think I can to I just did. And every time you act, even in small ways, you send a message to your nervous system. We are the kind of person who does this. That's how identity changes. Not from affirmations alone, but from aligned behavior. You don't become a writer by thinking about writing. You become one by writing over and over until it feels like second nature. You don't become healthy by learning about habits. You become healthy by living them, even on the days it's inconvenient. Repeated action reshapes how you see yourself. And when that shift happens, everything accelerates. Because now, you're not acting against your identity, you're acting from it. You're not just trying to keep up, you're becoming someone new. And this isn't about pushing yourself into burnout. It's about proving to yourself that you're capable of creating movement, even without ideal conditions. That's how momentum is born. From the first 10 minutes of the workout, from hitting publish on the thing that scares you, from saying yes when it's easier to say later. It's not about doing everything today. It's about doing something today, and then again tomorrow. Because when you act consistently, two things happen. One, you build evidence that you're not just dreaming, you're doing. Two, you build belief that you're someone who follows through, who creates progress, who trusts their own word. That's where the magic is. Not in massive breakthroughs, but in repeated proof. You prove that action changes things. You prove that effort matters. You prove that even on quiet days, your steps are stacking. And over time, the gap between who you are and who you want to be starts to disappear. Because now, you're not just planning the life you want, you're living it. So whatever you've been holding off on, waiting for the right mood, the right timing, the perfect setup, stop waiting. Move. Even if it's messy, even if it's small, even if your voice shakes or your hands sweat. Move anyway, because once you do, you'll look back one day and realize that tiny action, that was the moment everything started to change. So, here we are. If you've made it this far, it means something inside you is stirring. A spark, a nudge, a quiet knowing that it's time. Time to stop waiting. Time to stop planning perfection. Time to move even if it's messy, even if it's small. Because here's the final truth I want to leave you with. Action builds everything you're looking for. Confidence, identity, momentum, not thinking, not waiting, not hoping, just action. Every time you move, even when you're unsure, you prove something powerful to yourself. I'm not stuck. I'm not broken. I'm becoming. Waiting feels safe, but it costs you more than you think. It costs you self-respect. It delays your growth. It convinces you that you need more time when what you really need is just one brave step. And no, you don't need to have it all figured out. No, you don't need to feel ready. You just need to begin. Send the email. Start the routine. Have the conversation. Make the ask. Take the walk. Hit record. Change the tone. Whatever it is for you, begin now. Because here's what we often forget. Every small decision is writing your story. Every yes to discomfort. Every no to distraction. Every quiet moment of discipline when no one's watching. It's all shaping the person you're becoming. And the beautiful thing? You don't need to become someone new. You just need to remember who you were before fear told you to play small. You're already enough. You're already worthy. You're already equipped not with certainty, but with the power to evolve through motion. So let me ask you, when you look back a year from now, do you want to say, I waited? Or do you want to say, I moved and everything began to change? The choice is yours. But if you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. Start now. Start imperfect. Start before you feel like it. Because the future you're dreaming of, it's not waiting on more planning. It's waiting on you.